Oh, so far away, Lucas. Are you ready to morb?
It's Morbin Time, baby.
Morbin Time. So far away, Lucas, we've already done a Wiki Wednesdays on Morbius, but after it made $1 billion at the box office, we had to do another episode. That's right. Morbius is such an experience, it gets 2 Wiki Wednesdays made about it.
I think this might be the only way that Morbius comes back by popular demand.
You know what, we can talk about that in a moment. Well, the first thing we need to talk about is today's video is sponsored, kind of, because the sponsor today, Grey Cells, a graphic novel, which I'll talk about in a moment, reached out to us to sponsor a video, which we've already recorded, and I thought, you know what, as a bonus, we've worked with these guys before, let's do an extra episode for them that's also sponsored, but it's going to be Morbius.
That's the catch.
That's the catch. You get buy one, get one free, but we've got to talk about Morbius. So Lucas, what do you know about Morbius? The movie, not the character. So to clarify, the previous video we did was about the character, this is about the movie featuring the character, and I just consider them to be 2 distinct entities.
Okay, so I know 2 things about Morbius.
Okay, tell me. Lay them on me.
I know, number 1, that Matt Smith had a scene where he did like a sexy dance to I Have Sex.
Which, you know, is incredible, and was not in the trailer, as far as I'm aware.
As far as I'm aware, it wasn't, but that's all I heard about when people started coming out of theatres. Like, holy shit, that sucked, but that Matt Smith scene.
Yeah, and as well, you know that's something that the film's star and known texter of underage women, Jared Leto, doesn't like. Because he is a huge prick and a proponent of the school of method acting, which none other than like Batman himself is like, why is it when people method act, it's always to be a bell end and not a nice guy? Anyway. The reason that's so funny is because you know that Jared Leto doesn't like that because he takes his movies seriously, and the fact that he's trying to take Morbius so seriously is so funny.
It does look like Matt Smith was on the opposite end of like, this is going to be a shitstorm, but I'm all in.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ham it up and gnaw on the scenery, and people wondering, how do you know that Jared Leto took this film seriously? Because he was playing a blood doctor with a disease. He was in a wheelchair for all of his scenes before he had superpowers, and would grind production to a screeching halt for hours at a time when his character needed to go to the bathroom, and he'd like crawl into the bathroom in his wheelchair for Morbius. And I'm going to make a bet right now that at some point over the next 6 months, Jared Leto is going to get into an altercation with an interviewer when they ask him about Morbius. Because I don't think Jared Leto is aware of the memes about Morbius, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and as a result, will get annoyed if someone brings them up in front of him because he thinks that movie is high art. So I'm going to make like a bet right now, 6 months from the release of this video, Jared Leto is going to get into an altercation of some kind with an interviewer who tries to ask him about Morbin Time. Because you know that's what's going to happen. And what's the other thing you know about Morbius though? Lucas, you mentioned 2.
Yeah, I did. It's just a meme that lives rent-free in my head.
Which is?
It's just Vegeta and Goku fighting going, I think we should take this to somewhere quiet, and it's just Morbius screaming.
The thing is, like, Morbius is one of those movies, it's going to be like the prequel trilogy, where it's going to exist entirely through memes. Like, its success is entirely mimetic. But for the majority of our audience who haven't seen Morbius, but have heard about Morbius, let's give you a brief rundown of the film itself from Wikipedia here. There were several attempts to bring Morbius to the big screen since 1998, and this is something people maybe don't know, including joining the Blade franchise, because there is like a now legendary potential sequel hook where at the end of one of the Blade movies, there was going to be like a shadow on a building and it was Morbius. And that would have been kind of revolutionary at the time because the idea of like crossover movie universe didn't exist when the Blade movies were being made. And it never got made because I think they did research behind the scenes where no one knows who the fuck Morbius is.
It would have been a slightly hotter time to strike, at least coming off the 90s Spider-Man cartoons, which he was in for a bit.
And he's only in them for a couple episodes. Like, even though Morbius is one of the most recognizable villains from that like 90s Spider-Man cartoon, he's only in it for like a handful of episodes. And
people just remember the hand suckers, Karl.
They do, because and people wondering like, wait, does Morbius have like the hand suckers in the films or the comics? No, he doesn't. They had to put those into the TV show because there was a whole bunch of rules about what they could and could not show, which we've made a video about before. For example, like Spider-Man physically could not throw punches to incapacitate his enemies, which is why almost every fight scene in that show involves Spider-Man grabbing somebody or webbing them up. And one of the other things, like Morbius is a vampire. Well, you can't show him biting anybody. That's too violent. Kids might copy that. Fuck it, give him like the hand suckers, which ironically made him more interesting. That became that's a more interesting take on like, a typical vampire. And I'm kind of surprised they never incorporated that into canon, because that's a way more interesting way of handling the vampire thing. Like, it's different and therefore memorable. After announcing plans for a new shared universe inspired by Spider-Man, Sony began developing a film based on Morbius. Just like it is. Again, we're going to repeat what Lucas said, and we're going to say it one more time really clearly so people know what we mean. Sony are very clearly and so desperately trying to ape Marvel movies. They're not making Marvel movies. We know Morbius is not a Marvel movie, but they're trying to pretend that it is.
I just want to point out as well, if people think they're not, the Wikipedia has the image of one of the posters here, and it's Jared Leto on the top. It says Morbius, a new Marvel legend arrived.
Even just the post-credit sequence of Morbius where the Vulture turns up and it's Michael Keaton. Vulture is there. And can we just talk about fuck it, I don't care about spoiling movie, it's shit anyway. But the post-credit sequence for Morbius is Michael Keaton turns up. And he literally walks into the middle of the desert and goes to Morbius do you want to morb and find Spider-Man? Yes, sick, let's go for it.
But the premise is that he got teleported from the MCU into the prison in the Sony universe. They said, we don't have you on record, so they let him go, which is don't think it's how prisons work. But then they also just show him in the same Vulture outfit that, the Tinkerer made with alien technology found in the MCU. Yeah. And apparently he could recreate that shit. And then he just turns up in the middle of the desert and's like, hey Morb, I don't know how I'm here, it's got something to do with Spider-Man, let's go get him.
And that's the thing, and as well, it not only doesn't make sense within the established context of the MCU, it actively rewrites the history of the MCU by completely undoing all of the character development the Vulture had in that film. Because the end of Spider-Man Homecoming is the Vulture not revealing Spider-Man's identity because he earned his respect.
And I heard a rumor. You know who he is? If I knew who he was, he'd already be dead.
And it also ruined No Way Home because that's not how the fucking spell worked in No Way Home.
No. And the thing is, Sony don't care because they just so desperately want to link it to Spider-Man because it's the only success they have. And the only reason it's a success is because they own Spider-Man, but the MCU are making the movies. And rather than just sit there and get the kickbacks from $1 billion franchise.
The more $1 billion.
That is a franchise that does make a more $1 billion.
It does, yeah, literally.
Spider-Man saves cinema. That fucking Spider-Man movie literally saved the cinema industry as a whole. And they could just sit there and just cash checks off that for the rest of their days. No, but we can make a better one without Spider-Man. Anyway. The negative reception of the film generated an ironic meme culture on the internet. It has grossed over $163 million on a $75 million budget, which means it might get a sequel. So
it's true, it did make money.
And do you care about the production, the development, or filming, or do you want to go straight onto the fun stuff?
I care about the Morbius sweet Carl.
So we're going straight to internet memes, which is a section on the Wikipedia page. So, do you care about the... Should I read the synopsis of the post-credit scene?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, so in the film's mid and post-credit scene, Adrian Toomes finds himself transported to the Morbius universe. That's a rough time, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's at least when, Eddie Brock gets transported to the Spider-Man universe, he got to have a pint and leave. So having deduced that his transportation involves Spider-Man, Toomes approaches Morbius and suggests they form a team. That is a shit-tier team. Spider-Man is fighting Doctor Strange in his movie. He's fighting, the fucking Thanos' right-hand men and teaming up with the Hulk. What the fuck is Morbius gonna do?
He's gonna get his little hand suckers on him.
He's going to morb him. But then, do you know what? I'm just going to do all this because I just want to read the descriptions for the cast. So we have Jared Leto as Dr. Michael Morbius. And Leto was drawn to the character's struggle and the moral implications of a hero with a thirst for blood. He found the role surprisingly challenging because it was less character-driven than his prior performances and closer to his real-world personality.
What, of just being thirsty for girls? See what it is.
The thing is, though, who in an interview is going to say, well, it wasn't a challenge to play Morbius, a raging psychopathic asshole, because he's like me in real life. Matt Smith as Milo. He was originally announced by the comic book character Loxias Crown, but this was later changed to a significantly different character based on Morbius himself. After turning down other superhero film roles, he joined the film due to director Daniel Espinosa's involvement and his encouragement from his former Doctor Who castmate, Karen Gillan, who portrays... I bet he gonna add fucking words after that.
Do you think what happened was, he asked Karen Gillan, oh, well, how was it working on a Marvel movie? She's like, yeah, mate, it's great. Go be in the Marvel movies. And then neither of them understood that it was the Sony Marvel movies.
Do you know what I bet that's like? It's like that legend in the movie industry that the only reason Bill Murray signed on to appear in the Garfield movies. So I'm going to double check. It's Garfield movie writer. Let's have a quick look. So the person who wrote the Garfield screenplay is called Joel Cohen, but that's Cohen, C-O-H-E-N. And
did he think it was one of the Coen brothers?
Yes, he did. And that's what Bill Murray claims to this day, that the reason he appeared in those Garfield movies and signed on to do them without reading the script is because he was told by his agent, Joel Cohen's doing it. And he was like, oh, wow, the Coen brothers, that must be fucking great. And then he realised...
Can we try and petition a Coen brothers directed Garfield movie?
The thing is, and that's what Bill Murray thought. He's according to him, he thought that'd be really interesting. He's like, well, those guys are really good at comedy. This would be an interesting take on this problem. Of course, I'll sign on to do it. And then he turns up and it's Joel Cohen, H-E-N, and he was really mad that he'd signed on to do it. So he gave the worst performance possible. And that's
that would be a fucking movie. That would be an interesting movie for sure.
But what makes it so funny is that Bill Murray, according to industry legend, gave the worst performance he possibly could. But that inadvertently ended up being good because Garfield is supposed to be really just nonchalant and just doesn't give a fuck. So ironically, him giving a bad performance was perfectly suited for playing Garfield.
He didn't give a shit about the one character who doesn't give a flying fuck. And
I'm thinking it might have been the same thing here where Karen Gillian's like, look, Marvel movies are great. And he just got a script in the mail and he just said Marvel on it. And he's sort of new Marvel legend. Well, this must be a Marvel movie. And he turns up. And he's like, hey, well, where's Kevin Feige? And he's like, he's not fucking touching this shit.
Just Avi Arad slides in nah!
That's rough for it. Because he probably asked you, Karen Gillan's she was working on Endgame. Mm-hmm. And she's hanging out with fucking Samuel L. Jackson and fucking Robert Redford's coming in for his cameo. And it's super sick, and he turns up on Jared Leto's crawling out of the toilet on his knees towards a wheelchair. Just
I need a 3-hour lunch break to go hunt a deer. Give me a minute.
And he's just where's all the fun stuff? Anyway,
where's Spider-Man?
So Lucas, internet memes. Due to its lackluster box office performance and dour critical reception, Morbius inspired various internet memes. And what's your favourite Morbius? You said the one about Goku and Vegeta, let's fight somewhere empty and it's the Morbius theatre, but there's been some other pretty good ones, haven't there?
Well, other than that, it's got to be Morbin Time.
It's Morbin Time. So Polygon wrote that the film became a kind of collective internet hate watch, with fans sharing shit posts, which ironically praised it. Following its release, the hashtag Morbius sweep, which jokingly claimed Morbius was the most financially and critically successful movie of all time. Claims include the film becoming the first to sell over 1 trillion tickets, which earned it a, and I quote, more $1 billion. And receiving an impossible 200% approval rating and a similarly impossible 142% audience rating from Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm really glad that we released that previous Morbius video when we did, because we'd forgotten the movie had come out and released it late.
Yeah, let's talk
released
about
it
that.
late enough that it had come full
memes.
circle and the memes started.
So we recorded that original Morbius video weeks ahead of the movie's official release so that we could release it in tandem to, capitalise on more people searching for and being interested in Morbius. And the movie is so forgettable. It's quite meta. We literally forgot to edit and release that video. We forgot we had it. We have a list of things that are coming out soon that we can release and tailor content to, and Morbius wasn't even on that list.
I had it just sitting on my PC, and then eventually we turned around with it. But yeah, we never did do that Morbius video, did we?
Nope.
I guess get that out.
So one such post made the humorous claim that Martin Scorsese, who notoriously stated that superhero movies were not cinema, had changed his mind after seeing the film. And that's where you get like just the shit post, and it's just a picture of Martin Scorsese, and just in quotation marks it just says Morbius. Tyrese Gibson apparently did not understand the joke and shared the quote on Instagram believing that it was real.
Oh no.
The film received a resurgence in internet memes following its release to video on demand. That's the thing as well. That shit went straight to streaming.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And you know, like, and this is one of the things there's never been direct confirmation, but I would bet my left nut that Jared Leto had something to do with that. Like, I do not want to be associated with a film that's not released in cinemas. With many involving the fake Morbius catchphrase, it's Morbin Time. The catch of the joke being that people who'd not seen the film were unaware of whether or not the line was real. Oh, here we go, Lucas. Users on the official Discord server call themselves Morbheads and engage in Morbin. And do you want to take a guess at what Morbin is? Because you are never going to get it right.
Just talking about the film?
Nope. Illegally distributing pirated copies of the movie on other Discord servers. So people on the official Discord have taken it upon themselves to illegally pirate this movie.
Oh dear.
A large number of channels live streamed the entire movie on Twitch.
Yeah, someone did it for like 2 days, didn't they?
Someone live streamed Morbius for 2 days straight and Sony didn't notice. Which I think sums up like how forgettable this movie is, that even the company releasing it didn't realise someone was streaming it in its entirety live on Twitch.
Took them over 24 hours of them playing it on loop to be like, oh shit.
One channel titled Morbius 24/7 was banned after acquiring thousands of followers. Morbius piracy spread to other platforms, including Twitter, where the entire film was posted in a series of 52 2-minute long videos.
Fucking hell.
And then they compressed a 30-second long video and the entire script copy-pasted into individual suites. On Tumblr, the entire film was compressed into a single GIF. So today's Morbin was sponsored by Grey Cells, a graphic novel who actually reached out to us last year, if you recall, Lucas. I think it was Nisha who was in that video, but you might have been in on the editing process. Do you recall?
So I was neither in the video or editing that video, so I briefly remember watching the video and having a rough idea. But give me the summing up of what is our sponsor today.
It was actually kind of like a wholesome story for me. Is that they reached out to us originally with a Kickstarter campaign to get the novel made, and now it's been made. It's been released. Isn't that great? Like, they reached out to us, like, oh, can you help us get this thing made? It reached its goal, and it's now been made, and you can buy it at the links you find below. And I think that's really cool.
It is, yeah.
I was actually really excited when these guys reached back out. I'm like, oh yeah, it's been released. We just want to advertise it again, so people know that it exists. Like, that's really cool. That actually made me well up a little bit inside when I saw that. I'm like, wow, we actually helped someone get their their artistic vision realised. And then we decided to put their sponsor in a video about Morbius. So if you want to see something that is way, way better quality than Morbius, you can check that at the links below. And it's available on, I've got their stuff here, Comixology, Drive-Thru Comics, etc. But if you go to inkeddreams.com, the link you can find below, and you use the code FACTFIEND10, you get 10% off. And I love that we can have discount codes like that. And if I'd have thought about it more, I would have asked them to put his Morbin Time or something like that, maybe. And I'm not sure they can change that, so it's FACTFIEND10 to get 10% off. And I'm just really excited that these guys reached back out and got this thing made. And for anyone out there wondering, well, what is contained in this mysterious graphic novel you mentioned? We get artwork like this, which and the artwork they've sent me is fucking incredible. And I remember when they sent it to me the first time, I was like, holy shit. Why are you sponsoring our videos when you're this talented? It's that's art, innit?
It is, yeah.
The sad things you learn working online of thousands of people will watch our videos and they're thrown together in an afternoon and start me looking like a schlubby piece of shit. And then artists who can create stuff that looks like this after struggle in obscurity. And hopefully they don't have to anymore after we've mentioned in this video. And also, the story, it's a journalist has to hunt for a missing boy no one believes was abducted. And I remember when I was we did the initial plug and they sent me the first couple of pages and I was like, this is good. Don't you just you open it on the first page and just the artwork on it and you're like, This is good. Like, this is a fucking winner right here. Thanks, Grey Cells, check it out. And hopefully you enjoy your other plug more than you enjoy this one, unless...
Yeah, I'm sorry that you had to have that put next to Jared Leto's face.
It's Morbin time. Morbin!